Yondu has got his buff, and he's coming to the game as a 7-star character. These are the key updates, all very exciting, particularly for me, because I've always loved Yondu, but just read off the screen here. This is everything you need to know. Now, the footage you're going to see in today's video doesn't actually have anything to do with the buff. On his Awakened ability, he's always had the ability to place weaknesses on the opponent depending on the amount of debuffs on them when they throw a special attack. Now, these weaknesses are very, very potent. They scale with Sig up to, I think, around 40% weakness, which is insane, especially when you can get like 5 of them. My Yondu is Sig 100, so he's very, very tanky, but he could be even tankier. And the moment I press play here, we're going to get into a very fun lane, 6.4.5 Vivified. There's also Masochism, but it's Vivified. That's the big one. Now, what this node does is it gives the opponent 200% defensive combat power rate, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. I'm sure today there are a couple cheap tricks to get around it. However, when this first released, you kind of had to respect it, and you took ages and you got backed into a wall, or you tanked the SP3. So I think Ghost with the Hood synergy was number 1, and then obviously Masochism made it slower, but I think Quake was number 2. However, with Yondu, we're just going to tank 20 SP3s to the face throughout this quest, and we're going to be absolutely fine, thanks to his signature ability. And while this doesn't actually showcase the buff, I thought this was the perfect backdrop to talk about the buff. Now, is this overkill? You may be saying, Matty, why do you have a 6-star rank 4 going through post-tune down Act 6? That did 500 damage, by the way. That did nothing. We are pilfering his armor ups, and he has insane weakness, right? That just did nothing. But anyway, isn't this overkill? Yeah, you're right. But 2 things to say to that. A, most 6-star rank 4s would die if they were to be played as casually as I am playing Yondu right now. If I were to take an average 6-star rank 4 character and not care about the nodes and just tank SP3s, I would still die. So this is still very, very impressive. Yondu is Immortal. But also, have you seen the way Kabama buffing the early game right now? There are rank 4 resources in Act 5. That's mad. It's not entirely insane to suggest that a newer player progressing slowly through MCOC will have a couple 6-star rank 4s by the time they get to this quest. Now, are you going to take the Vivified lane on your first run through Act 6? Not unless you're mad. But if you are mad, then feel free to go through the Vivified lane on your first run through Act 6 if you have a Yondu, an Awakened Yondu. Because he is ridiculously tanky. You can see here, 3rd SP3 of the quest, it did 500 damage, and thanks to the power lock from Civil Warrior, I'm going to be at like a full yellow bar when I finish this fight. Which is a little bit insane. And we are going to go through the entire lane. We're not taking the boss, I can't be asked. But we are doing the entire lane, and this is a good backdrop to talk about the buff. So, I have some problems with this buff, but my review on the whole is very positive. I'm very much looking forward to this guy as a 7-star character. So, my problems. My problems come about from his utility. The tech class, it kind of needs to always update itself to keep up with the constantly evolving mutant class. The mutant class always evolves defensively. Like, there's always a new mutant defender coming out, and it's just mad. And the tech class needs to update to constantly improve itself in line with what the mutant class comes up with. So you have Domino, Bishop, Mr. Sinister, Dust, Onslaught, Captain Britain. They're everywhere, and every new tech character that comes out is built with new utility to cancel out and counter all of those mutant characters. Now, Yondu's kit focuses on dealing with prowess. The mutant class has all but moved away from prowess. Instead of having effect on themselves to increase their special damage, they now employ Daunted and Neuroshock to get around that and instead apply effects to the opponent. And now we're seeing the tech class kind of evolve to get around that with the Maker. Okay? Think of that what you will, but that's the reality. So yes, they've updated Yondu's kit when it comes to tackling prowesses. We are no longer pilfering any sort of prowesses, we are invalidating. Now this is what Nimrod does. However, the power of Nimrod is kind of what's fueled that move away from prowesses. So it feels like, yeah, you've updated Yondu, but you know that he's not going to be quite up there with the biggest, baddest tech characters in the game. I think we will see Yondu in competitive content like Battlegrounds or Alliance War. However, you're not going to see him anywhere near as frequently as someone like Bastion or Jack-O-Lantern, and certainly not in the toughest of mutant matchups against someone like a Captain Britain, against someone like an Onslaught, right? You're just not going to see that. At least that's my prediction. Or like a Jean Grey. He's not going to be quite as dominant as those characters, and that's a shame, because I love Yondu. I'd love to see him thrive, but against those like top-tier techs, not going to happen. But the rest of his kit, I really, really like. I'm very, very positive about this buff. So there are lots of things going on other than his prowess ability. He obviously has his Stifle debuff, so every debuff on the opponent decreases their combat power rate by 10% up to a max of 50. But then you have the Stifle, and you can see here that actually I'm throwing full combos against Sunspot, and yes, he has insane combat power rate, but that's not actually as insane as Vivified normally is. He's actually controlling this lane better than like 90% of other champions in the game. He has very nice power control. If, for example, there's an SP2 that you just don't want to see, like, for example, Mangog's SP2, with Yondu's combat power rate reduction, you're probably not going to see that SP2 as often as you otherwise would. But it works both ways. It works both ways. Either the opponent throws fewer specials, in which case he's done his job as a tech character, or the opponent throwing specials fuels your damage output. So on the SP2, he gains a passive Fury. Nice, it's passive, not a buff. But he also gains an additional one for each special attack the opponent has thrown in a fight, I believe up to a max of 6. Now, these Furies are very, very potent, so it works both ways. Either you control the opponent's power, or you benefit from the power that they do gain. That's very nice. Then there is the heal block. It's had its duration extended, and I greatly appreciate that, right? I appreciate heal block debuffs on a champion like Sentinel. Sentinel is brilliant. There are so many healing nodes in Act 9.3 in the beta, and also in Alliance War, and if you don't have Sentinel, you know, if you weren't lucky enough to get him from the Gifted Guardians in December, get yourself a Yondu, because he does basically the same thing, and he hits very, very hard. That damage ramp with the SP2, so the Furies synergize not only with his basic combos, with his special attacks, but also his Ruptures. Now, his Ruptures end up ticking for quite a lot. You're going to see against this Red Skull here, obviously I am kind of pissing around in this quest, and I am taking a bunch of SP3s to the face to prove a point. However, at some point in this fight, I am actually going to chuck off an SP2 with 6 Furies, and you're going to see, for a 6-star rank 4, the damage output is just so nice. The Furies last a long time. You can cycle these SP2s and gain hella Furies, hella damage output with the Ruptures. It's kind of a shame that, you know, they cap at 5 and otherwise they refresh. But I can kind of see why Kabam did that, because oh my, do they hit so hard. You get this very consistent damage output in short form, medium form, long form, right? If you are in Act 9, opponents with 900,000, a million plus health, grab yourself a Yondu, you're going to be dealing very, very nice damage output very, very consistently, and he's going to cut through that sort of health. No sweat, no sweat. Do your basic combos, chuck off your SP2, you have an SB1 there for utility. You have the natural combat power rate reduction anyway. You can see here, 6 passive Furies, they last for a while. We tank another SB3 to the face. However, the combos that end this fight, you're going to see, that's 1.1k per Rupture. Okay, so you see here, he obviously nullifies 1, but then 1.1k, I do a few hits through the block, those Ruptures can be applied through the block, and that is 10k per second of DOT from a 6-star rank 4. 7-star rank 4s exist, right? That is enormous damage output. So my thesis is this. Will you see Yondu in top-tier competitive content against champs like Bastion, Jack-O-Lantern, even the Maker? Probably not. Probably not, right? He just doesn't have a kit that is tuned towards 2025 mutants, okay? You're just not going to see it. I'm sure in some Battlegrounds matches, a skill player will be able to get around these sorts of defenders with a very high score, but they won't do as well as those other tech characters. I'm not saying he's bad, he's just not going to be quite as proficient as those other options. But the rest of the game is where I think we're going to see Yondu. And he is going to be everywhere, right? He's going to say, look, I may not be as brilliant as Jack-O-Lantern for taking all mutants that exist, okay? Maybe not. But everywhere else, I am just a good character, right? I'm not just a good tech character, I'm a good character. Take me anywhere, I'll probably rip it to shreds, right? And that's just what we like to see from Yondu. He's a very, very powerful character, at least in the films. He just whips out the arrow and then everybody seems to die. And that is what's going to happen here. Very few champions in the game still, to this day, are immune to Rupture. So he's got access to his damage output in an awful lot of matchups, right? So Bleed for Rupture, very good swap there. And I think we're just going to see a lot of people who enjoy Yondu finally get the opportunity to properly take him to the maximum possible rank and rarity and enjoy the kit that he finally deserves. Because this is his second buff. Right, we had the first buff years ago, which resulted in roughly the kit we see today, the basic structure for it. And now we've just had a bit of a numbers tune-up, right? And that is appropriate for this character. He's a character that wasn't quite there. Now he is there, and he hits very, very hard indeed. Okay, so we have 2 more fights left on this quest. I've basically done yapping. We have Black Widow Clairvoyant. I think in this fight, yeah, she just throws a bunch of SP2s. But I think it will be a total of 20 SP3s that we tank to the face in this quest. Now, this has nothing to do with the buff. This has always been on his awakened ability. However, it's very, very nice. And should I talk about him being a defender? I mean, I suppose I could, right? If you happen to get clipped by Yondu, you know, he crits quite a lot. His ruptures hurt. They can be applied through the block. Make sure you parry this guy from a distance if your opponent tries to trick you on BG defense. Otherwise, you're going to get crit through the block and get a rupture through the block, and that's going to hurt. And then when you throw a special attack, if he's awakened, my god, are those weaknesses so potent, and I'm sure you can see. But it just takes so long to kill him if he can apply those weaknesses to you. And you can see here, Elsa Bloodstone, that did 1,500. Come on, man. Come on. I'm still at 70% health, right? And we're done with the lane. This is the last fight in the lane. Now, something you do want to watch out for, if you want to do this yourself, you want to have a bit of fun, make sure that the Masochism is on cooldown when they throw an SB3. Otherwise, when they throw the SB3, they will purify the weaknesses and it will deal normal damage. That's annoying, and you kind of have your health pool and then inequity to deal with the rest, and it's going to hurt a lot more. I did a practice run before I did this run, and that happened, and I took a little bit more damage. I did get through it, but this is a bigger and better result. I think I had more health this time than I did the last time. But Elsa Bloodstone is just about done. So that is just about all I have for you today. If you have made it this far, then congratulations. You have an attention span greater than that of a goldfish. And go away.